When we live from the true self, there's this presence, this love, this energy that goes beyond time and space. So miracles can happen like that.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 419 with guest Kimberly Snyder. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for being here, as always. Hey, before we get started, I want to tell you that during this episode, just a heads up, it's not that big of a deal. I'm being really dramatic about it. I did not feel well when I was interviewing Kimberly, and I think you can kind of tell. Now you'll be able to tell because I'm telling you. I'm just really quiet throughout the whole thing. Like usually I'm having a conversation, and this episode, and she's fantastic. You're going to love her, but I kind of just let her take the reins. It was recorded a couple of weeks ago. I'm totally done. I was getting off an antidepressant. And if anyone's ever weaned themselves off an antidepressant, you know what I'm talking. I don't even think I need to say anymore. For those of you that don't know that experience, it's interesting. Please do it with a medical doctor helping you, which I did. And yeah, it's a process that kind of messes with you a little bit. And I was just feeling the effects of it. Anyway, that's why I'm so quiet during the interview. I'm so much better now. And I started a new hobby. I always tell you guys these things because it's going to hold me accountable. If I don't tell anybody, then I can just quit really easy, which as someone with ADHD, I know is my thing. I start hobbies, projects, am gung-ho about it in the beginning. I will get all the resources and plan it like a mofo. But when it comes to follow through and finishing, not so much, not as fun. Anyway, don't laugh when you hear this. I have been mildly obsessed with people who are really good at shuffle dancing. Okay, it's not like what was that dancing that was really popular for a while? The river dance. And it's not really like tap dancing. Anyway, look it up on YouTube. And I came across this account on TikTok where it was these 2 moms, and they had been working on it for months. And I was like, I feel like I can do that. Anybody else like middle-aged who sees something physical online or on social media and they're like, I could probably do that. And it looks so much better in your head. And then when you actually go to try it, you're like, oh, I forgot. I'm not 25 anymore. But anyway, so I decided that that's what I'm going to start trying. And I'm going to record my progress. I don't know if I'm going to show anybody, but I'm going to record my progress to see if I'm getting better. I'm sure and I have some experience. It's just been a minute. It's been a minute. So I'm hoping that muscle memory comes to my rescue. I mean, I can do the Running Man. I mean, I'm not good at it, but I can do it. Anyway, that's that. Who knows? Maybe in a year I'll be, entering a dance contest. And that'll be fun. Anyway, more on that later, or maybe not. But don't forget that transcripts are available for episodes if you need them. And also, if you have not yet, I would so appreciate it if you left a review for Make Some Noise, if you have purchased and read it on Amazon, especially if you bought it there, or Audible, that matters so much, or Goodreads, if you are a fan of Goodreads. And you can follow me on Goodreads. You can see all the abundance of fiction I've been reading lately. There's a reason for it, partly because I just like it. More news on that to come. And lastly, for those of you that don't know Kimberly, let me tell you a little bit about her before we jump in. Kimberly Snyder is a spiritual guide and meditation teacher, nutritionist and holistic wellness expert, and a 3-time New York Times bestselling author of 5 previous books, including Radical Beauty, which she co-authored with Deepak Chopra. Her highly anticipated new book, You Are More Than You Think You Are, Practical Enlightenment for Everyday Life, is being published on January 25th, 2022. She is the founder of Saluna, a holistic lifestyle brand that offers wellness products, digital courses, practical enlightenment meditation, and the Saluna Circle. She's been featured in dozens of national and international media outlets, including Good Morning America, The Today Show, The Dr. Oz Show, Ellen, The Wall Street Journal, The Guardian, Elle, and Vogue. So without further ado, here is Kimberly. Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Andrea. I'm so glad we can make the space to have a conversation. That's always nice.
Yeah. And I, when I was planning out these different themes and I had a theme around therapy and mental health and a theme around just all different ones. And I knew I had to have spirituality in there because selfishly, that's the part where I struggle the most. And we're talking about, I'm talking to other guests about, deconstruction and all different things. But I thank you for sending me a copy of your book. It's You Are More Than You Think You Are, Practical Enlightenment for Everyday Life. And I want to dig into this, but I'm curious. First, I'm curious, like, what did you grow up being this enlightened and evolved, or did something happen? That's the question I always like to start with people with, because I'm just so curious, because I did not come out of the womb that way.
No, I certainly have been on quite a journey for the past few decades. And I grew up, we always say our parents do our best. Of course, we love them. But I had a lot of sort of limiting negative beliefs that I adopted early on, like all of us, including that love was something that had to be earned or it was based on achievement. So I grew up very anxious, very focused on grades, very focused on my weight, all these external references. I still am a recovering perfectionist to a degree. And I grew up Catholic. So we would go to church once a week and there wasn't much in between doing that. I feel like we checked the box. We did that practice, but I've been on quite a journey, Andrea, in many ways, through high school, I had eating disorders. Then I had a lot of digestive issues, chronic bloating, constipation, all sorts of acne, rashes in my skin. So when I sought out, I was seeking answers. I didn't really know what I was seeking, but it was right when I graduated from college. So I was 21 years old. And I mentioned this in the book, but it was this really formative part of my journey where I started backpacking. And it was the first time I started to feel free and I didn't have this agenda. And I saved some money after college. I actually worked for a year in Australia. And then I thought I was going to travel for a few weeks, but it ended up being 3 years in total. I was doing it very cheaply, living out of my car in Africa that I sold back, just staying in all these guest houses and really cheap places in Asia. I was mostly in Asia and Africa. But it ended up being 3 years through over 50 countries. And this, Andrea, was really the place where it just, you talk about deconstruction, like it just blew, my mind. I was very open to different ideas and I was freeing myself of a lot of these preconceived notions and the labels that I put on myself. So out there on the road is where I really created my philosophy. That was the beginning of my philosophy that later I would go on to write books about and create a website about. But at the time, I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just learning and absorbing. And one of the places that had the most impact on me was India. And I went there for the first time. I was there for about 3 months. And then I came back and I spent some more months there. And it was here that, I started to learn about concepts like the true self and enlightenment, which sounds like this big, scary word, but it's really about more awakening, more self-awareness of who we are. And I started, I was like, like, wait a minute, does this mean I'm like, Hindu or like, what is this? And then I realized, oh, true yogic science, which is where all these terms come from, like the true self and the ego. It's really this principle, these oneness, universal principles, which can be layered on top of any religion, or you can be agnostic. You don't have to be any religion at all. It's about working with energy and working with a deeper connection to the formless part of us, to our soul, to spirit inside of us, whatever term you want to use. But it was there when I was backpacking India that I started to really understand myself more. And I started to learn really tangible practices about meditation and yoga and self-connection. So it didn't come from the womb. It came through my life experiences. And then it deepened in the book, as I talk about, as I went through really hard experiences actually in the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess the short answer is that it happened within the 50 countries in 3 years that you visited.
It was the beginning, that over the past 12 years of meditation, I've really been going deeper and deeper into myself and into this work. And if I could tell you a funny story, is that, I came back from after the trip. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, but I moved to New York City because a lot of my family is on the East Coast. And I was so excited about sharing these concepts and ideas. And I started to apply these teachings. And I was really focusing on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. I don't know if you've heard of him, Andrea, but he is the yoga guru who brought yoga to the West.
Okay. That was one of the questions I was going to ask you about Yogananda.
Yes. So I never heard of him, but then I was in a bookstore in Rishikesh, which is the yoga capital of the world in India. And I found this blue book and I started reading about these teachings. And I learned, he came here and he was talking about this, and it created so much attention. He actually met with Calvin Coolidge, the president of the United States at the time, all these great leaders. Steve Jobs read Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi every year until he passed, from when he was, I think, 14, to elevate his creative genius, because these teachings are about tapping into our inner power and our stable creative intelligence and energy and all this amazing stuff. So anyways, I was broke. I had no money after this trip, as you can imagine. I stretched my money as far as I could go, but I was sitting on this, Murphy bed, and I was starting to apply the teachings, and I just started to see these patterns starting to emerge in my life. So even though I didn't have any money, I started a free blog, a WordPress blog, which back then was my name, KimberlySnyder.net. I was starting to go back, did a teacher training. So I was teaching yoga. I was going back to nutrition school, and I was just sharing what I was passionate about. And what was crazy, Andrea, is that without this usual pushing and sort of striving and this, over efforting, which had been part of my life up until that point, it was like I stepped into this flow and listened to a river. And I just told my yoga students about my blog, but then it started to spread across New York City. And then my first celebrity found me. She had been reading the blog. And then I started working with her, and I got on a film set. And then the next thing, I don't even own a TV to this day, Andrea, but I was starting to work with all these celebrities. And then I was starting to be a regular guest on Good Morning America. And then the first book deal came, which is HarperCollins, right? And my editor, Sarah. So I came to me and I had this idea. I had a manuscript for a book called Catching the Fire. And it was about a lot of the teachings in this book, Andrea. And it was a travel memoir. And she looked at my website and she said, she's like, the food stuff, your recipes are really starting to take off. So why don't we do that book next? And we'll do a food book first. So this was exactly 10 years ago. Right. 10 years ago. So that food book went on to be called The Beauty Detox Solution. That just took off, sold like 1 million copies. And then the second book became a food book. And then suddenly I was known as this celebrity nutritionist, even though the way I was working with my clients was always holistic. It was always, emotional well-being, mental health.
Way more than just food.
Meditation. Always, always. So here we are 6 books later, 10 years later. And I'm so excited for the first time to share my full playbook of these teachings and techniques for working with your energy that benefits your whole life, not just in your weight, although that too happens, but in vitality, energy, abundance, creativity, confidence. And this is really the first time I'm sharing any of this. So I'm very excited.
I love that story and everything, all of it. And Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers inline and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/noise, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/noise to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/noise. Fast forward to the end of 2024 and think about your goals. What can you do right now to give yourself the best chance of succeeding? If you want to learn a new language, you absolutely should get Babbel. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Now it's so easy to speak simple conversation phrases with the guy that takes care of my lawn without having to consult language apps. Here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/noise. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/noise, spelled BABBEL.com/noise. Rules and restrictions may apply. So I didn't know that part about you, that you had 6 previous food books.
The first 2 were food.
Okay.
The third one started getting into the spirituality. It was called Beauty Detox Power. And it was about our chakras and our energy centers and the mind body. And then my 4th book I wrote with Deepak Chopra, and that was Radical Beauty. So that did have a big spiritual component as well as Ayurveda. And then the last book was more about your perfectly imperfect life and self-acceptance. And then and it had some food in the end. This book has no food per se, but it's about working with energy across your whole life, tapping into your true self energy, getting past fear.
One of the things I love about the book is that you have these chapters that don't feel overwhelming about specific topics, you know, just around fear and love and whole. And then you slip in practices, which I'm a huge fan of because I don't like self-help books that just talk about the problem. I don't think there's that many of them out there, but I like tangible tools and strategies that people can use in their life immediately as they're reading.
Well, yes, 100%. The subtitle of the book is Practical Enlightenment for Everyday Life. Because similarly to you, I love Eckhart Tolle, for instance. I think he definitely has an incredible energy. And I read his books, but then I'm like, like a new earth, like, what do I really do with this? I understand the philosophy. And I think, we have these parts of us. We are human, right? We are stumbling along. We're doing our best. We make mistakes. We learn, we keep going and growing and evolving. And then we have this really stable part of us, this, call it spirit individualized, the soul, the universe inside of us, this incredible infinite intelligence. So we need practices to keep stabilizing back into that part of us that we use in everyday life. We use if we get triggered by our mother-in-law, or we go on social media and we start to feel, oh my God, I'm not good enough, or look at all this stuff that other people are doing. Look how many more followers they have. Whatever it is, we need actual practices to work with our breath, to work with the mind, to allow emotions, which are meant to be energy and motion, to flow through us instead of stagnating and creating more triggers and inflammation and hormonal imbalance. So every single chapter of the book has very tangible practices for those specific moments. Like in the confidence chapter, what you do when you feel like you're not enough. There's something you stop, you go away for 90 seconds and you do this, and it helps bring you back, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us about the true self, because I feel like people have different, experts have different philosophies and definitions of what that means. So I'm curious what yours is.
So as I mentioned, we have this human part of us, and then we have this inner stable part of us. The human part of us, or this outer shell, so to speak, is what Wayne Dyer calls the less than 2% of us. This is what we see. This is how our body looks. This is what we're doing with our hands, out in the world. And the issue comes not from having this, body. We are in a human body. We're having an embodied experience. But the issue arises when we over-identify with this as who we are. This is what yoga calls the pseudo soul, or the ego. So it's anything that you sense with your 5 senses, right? So what you see with your eyes, you hear, you look at, again, like the media, or you look at what other people are doing, or social media, or whatever. So it's all this very sensory information that's coming at us. And so if we don't have tools and practices, we will over-identify with all of that. And we will, by nature, feel small and limited. We will feel, oh my gosh, my body is aging. I'm getting old. I'm not good enough. I don't have the skill set. Look at how much money is in the bank account. I'm not good enough. I don't. It's always this small limitation. And so the solution to the problem is not found in the same place as the issue. We go to a different place. Mm-hmm. And what yoga teaches us is the true self is this formless energy inside of us. It's the infinitely creative, intelligent, deep, stable, courageous part of us. It's the part where Eckhart talks about where you go beyond thinking. So it's something that you experience in meditation, you experience in self-connection. It's, as I mentioned earlier, when we're living more from the heart than the head, and from our gut intuition, which can be developed over time. So we can call it, there's whole books that have been written about this, but for me, it's just connecting to that formless part of us, which has to be experienced. So it's not, you can call it the soul, again, spirit individualized, the universe inside of us. So meditation is not what, somewhat, in the West, sometimes we butcher these ideas. It's not just about relaxation. Mm-hmm. Right? Because relaxation means we're relaxing the 5 senses, but they're still turned on. We're still tuned into them. True meditation, effective meditation, is about taking the energy away from the 5 senses, pratyahara, one of the limbs of yoga, and withdrawing it into the spine, into the Sushumna Nadi, which is our central energy channel, where we start to concentrate the energy up and down the spine into the brain, and in particular, a place at the base of the brain called the medulla oblongata. When we concentrate energy in our third eye, which is what we see beyond, beyond the physical, where we intuit, where we feel, where we just know a deeper knowing, it actually activates this ganglion of nerves, the medulla oblongata. So we start to turn on different parts of our brain. We start to activate and unleash this power inside of us. So in the book, there is quite a bit of science as well, supportive science for the discerning mind. There's these ancient techniques and personal stories to show how it's applicable, because this really, my intention with writing this book, Andrea, was I look at the world today and I think, oh my gosh, this is needed more than ever. This is how I can help people the most. I just want to put this out in the world. And this book wasn't something I planned, by the way, of all the books. This book came down when I was 34 weeks pregnant with my younger son, Moses. And I just thought, oh my God, this is not, I'm trying to slow down here, but it just, it came down like lightning, literally.
Bad timing, but perfect timing.
Yeah, perfect. It's all perfect divine timing. And I said, I don't know what to do with this. So next thing I knew, I'm on a Zoom presenting my idea. I write a sample chapter. And oh my gosh, Andrea, I signed my book deal 3 days before Moses was born.
Oh my gosh.
And then I waited the full, Ayurveda says 40 days. I waited 60 days and then I started writing and it just poured out of me. I feel like, oh my gosh, I look around and I see all the suffering. I see so many people confused, anxious, not feeling good enough. I do not think social media helps in that regard in all these ways. And I just know that these teachings on all levels can really help us overcome the negative beliefs, the emotional blocks that hold us back from tapping into this infinite potential that is inside all of us. Mm-hmm. And I look at myself, Andrea, I was broke. I was anxious. I had eating disorders. I was completely disconnected from my body. And I think about where I am today, over this journey of real, soulmate love with my husband and having this prosperity and this beautiful land that we are the stewards of and my children and getting to create and write and my brand Saluna, my podcast. This is possible for everybody. We just have to learn to tap in to this power inside of us, into the true self potential.
And you talk about intuition in this book, and you tell a story. I think you kind of told a story over 2 different chapters about meeting your husband. Can you talk about that? Yes, I know. I write about intuition as well, and it can be tricky for some people. So, what are your thoughts?
So, there's a lot that the yogis say about intuition, which is different than conscious. We'll say like conscious is sort of the part of you that, wants to adhere to morals and different standards. But it is taught that the more we meditate and tune in, again, through effective meditation and these practices, we start to tune in to source. We start to pull all our attention, which is always going out. What's going on? What do I see in the world? What are people doing? And we concentrate that energy inside. What happens is we start to develop what Yogananda calls the infallible voice of the infinite, which is the voice of intuition. And so we start to live more from this deeper place of guidance where we just feel that, this flow that I experienced directly. I just felt like I was in this flow and I would write about this or I would mention something to somebody. We're not living on, just the surface of life anymore. It's not just like hard facts, but we're going with energy. And I was just talking, I have quite a few neuroscientists on my podcast, and we're talking about one of them, we were talking about how mind doesn't just express in the brain, but mind is through every cell of your body. And it also creates a gravitational field outside of your body. And this is something I talk about in the magnetism chapter that I mentioned, where when we're tuning into energy and frequencies, it's not just black and white. And I also talk about in the book going beyond numbers, because numbers are just one finite qualification, one label, but actually there's so much more energy when when you go beyond all of that. So with my husband, long story short, I, went through a very difficult time in my life a couple of years ago, now over 4 years ago. Where I lost my mom suddenly. We found out she had cancer on Valentine's Day, and then she passed on March 29th. So it was literally 6 weeks, and she was completely healthy, and she was with us at Christmas, and everything seemed normal. So it was like a huge shock. And my younger son wasn't even 1. So I just, it's like, oh my gosh, anything can happen at any time. And then a few months later, some time later, I decided to move out on my own. So I decided to break up, to leave my former partner, the father of my first child. And it just, I just got to this point, Andrea, I was like, oh my gosh, life is short and I want deep connection. And he's a great guy, but it's just not there, Mm-hmm. So I was a new mom. I lost my mom and suddenly I was a single mom.
Yeah.
And so I was like, whoa, rock bottom. This is not how I thought my life was going to be. It was like full shambles. And I ended up meeting with a monk who I've known for some years from the Self-Realization Fellowship, which is from Yogananda's meditation organization. And he said to me, Kimberly, treat your home like an ashram for 5 months. Don't worry about anything. Just go deep. So that's what I did. I read scripture for 5 months. I read the Bhagavad Gita. I read the New Testament of the Bible. I meditated like crazy. I took care of my son, who was very young. But other than that, I didn't really go out that much. It was sort of like a quasi-imposed isolation period.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds a lot like quarantine.
It was. And I just
like an enlightened quarantine, though, to be fair.
Oh, yes, a voluntary one. But I got to tell you, Andrea, like it was literally like the dark, like I was in this dark cave and I started to emerge a little bit by a little bit, like the light started to come out and I felt very stable. For the first time in my life, I felt a lot of trust in myself, trust in the true self, trust in life. I felt very strong. So then I just started going about life and I was very content. And then one day it was a podcast dinner party with people I didn't really know, but some people that had come on my podcast were in LA. And I got invited to this random dinner party in Venice Beach, which is where we used to live. And John was one of them, my future hubby. And it was this point in my life where I was really tuned into that inner voice, Andrea, into my intuition. And I met John and, we just tuned into each other. And he said within 15 minutes, he knew I was going to be his wife. But here's the funny part. If I was my previous self, like looking, a lot of emphasis on the senses, I don't think we would have ever gotten together. I've been like, he's not my type. Mm-hmm. He's like a big, brawny dude. He looks like an MMA fighter. From the neck down, he's completely covered in tattoos. He wears a gold grill in his teeth. Mm-hmm. On plant-based, he's this, he's huge, like into smoking meats and motorcycles and all this stuff. But I wasn't using those evaluations. And I think, oh my gosh, how many times do opportunities go by us or soulmates go by us when we're out here? But I felt in my heart, and he did too. And the other funny thing, Andrea, is that he always said he would never get married. He went in for a vasectomy a couple years earlier. He's like, I'm never going to have kids. And we just, boom, like clicked. Monday, 3 days later. Oh, and I said, I got to go now. I got to leave this party because I had to do a beach walk. Mm-hmm. And I do a beach walk every morning. He's like, oh, well, I'll come. And I'm like, really? Because it's in like 5 hours. But he shows up for the beach walk. We talk for 2 hours. That night, I had an event for Levi's. I do speaking for them. And he came. And then it was like 3 dates in 24 hours. And then Monday, he told me he loved me.
And then he went and got his vasectomy reversed.
No, he didn't actually get the vasectomy, but he had thought about it. So,
I thought he got it.
No, he didn't get it. So it was just like boom. It's like when we live from the true self, there's this presence, this love, this energy that goes beyond time and space. So miracles can happen like that. It's very, not to get esoteric, but we go into like almost like different dimensions, how quantum physics talks about, the different waves of energy versus treating things as separate particles. So you step into a different way of living. Mm-hmm. So we got together. There was no effort. There was no going on any sort of, online dating or any site. We just got together. And then there was this flow. And then, he loved Emerson, my older son, immediately. And we got pregnant. We have another baby now. And then we decided to move to the mountains. And this house here, I talk about the abundance chapter. This was only the third house we looked at and it flowed in. And then we had a really funny story about how we got our farm in Hawaii recently, a few months ago. I'm not saying everything goes perfectly. I mean, we're still human. We're still going to have struggles and ups and downs. But I will say that when we switch living just from the ego into this more very deeply centered place, every part of your life shifts and transitions in the most beautiful way. And there's none of this comparing yourself or, not feeling good enough, because you start to understand what you really are, which is a unique,
yes, I love that. Today's podcast is sponsored by MIDI Health. Ladies, are you over 40 like me and dealing with hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, some vaginal dryness, or weight gain? Don't just accept it as part of aging. These symptoms are often linked to hormonal changes during perimenopause and menopause. At MIDI Health, they get it. Their experts know what you're going through and how to help. MIDI clinicians are menopause specialists offering safe, effective, FDA approved solutions. And guess what? MIDI care is covered by insurance. So stop pushing through it alone. Schedule a virtual visit and dive deep into your unique symptoms and health background. You'll walk away feeling heard and with a plan to start feeling better. Visit MIDI Health today and reclaim your well-being. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. joinmidi.com. I have definitely been in that place where my paycheck ran out before the next one got here. Life doesn't happen bi-weekly, so why should payday? The money you earn can be in your hands today with Earnin. Earnin is an app that gives you access to your pay as you work, up to $100 per day or up to $750 per pay period. Just download the Earnin app and verify your paycheck. Then access up to $100 a day as you work and leave an optional tip. Any money you access plus tips are automatically repaid from your next paycheck. You can use Earnin to pay for a girls' night out, a last-minute gift for a loved one, or even summer camp for the kids. Make Earnin a part of your financial routine and join Earnin's over 3.5 million customers who say things like, when I think about Earnin, I think about financial stability, security. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. Download Earnin today, spelled EARNIN in the Google Play or Apple App Store. When you download the Earnin app, type in noise under podcast when you sign up. It really, really helps the show. Noise under podcast. Subject to your available earnings, location, daily max, and pay period max. See earnin.com/TOS for details. Earnin is a financial technology company, not a bank. Bank products are issued by Evolve Bank and Trust, member FDIC. I've loved listening to you. You talk with such presence and also ease, but I understand and feel very much that it's not that you're saying that things are actually easy for you. Like, I still believe you that there are obstacles that you have to face, but it sounds like you're so grounded in your practice that you can quickly turn to all of the tools that help you and can get through it. Is that a fair assessment that I'm making?
Totally. When we live life from this deeper connected place, we meet each moment as it comes, like you said, with tools, with deeper awareness. So there's more harmony. And, this word, surrender is sort of this funny word in the West. It's like, you think about the war, the Civil War battles where someone surrendered to the other. It's giving up. But actually, surrender means we're not fighting in this moment. We find harmony here and now, even if it brings up a feeling we don't like, an emotion is coming up, or there's discomfort. We find a way to harmonize and let that wash through us, which generally takes about 10 minutes if we concentrate on the energy versus getting into our mind thoughts. We allow the energy to move through. We harmonize, and then great action can be taken. Then we're very effective if we want to shift things, or we want to, create something, or whatever it is. We have to find the harmony here now first. Otherwise, we're very ineffective. Otherwise, we're wasting energy left and right. Then we're stressed out. We feel like we never get to anywhere on our to-do list. We're running around. So we have to have these practices that bring us fully, emotionally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually into this moment first.
Yes. Well, I'm on board with that. I love the word surrender so much. I got it tattooed on my forearm. Yeah, it's such a impactful,
yes,
and not just an impactful word, but definition. And I love how you explained it. I think of it so much the same. And I actually got it tattooed on my arm after my father passed away in 2016, because he was the first person, that was the first death of someone close to me that I had ever experienced. So that kind of grief, you can't prepare for that. And as someone who's struggled with allowing emotions and wanting to control them, it was the first time. It was a lot like childbirth. It's like, you think that you have a plan. No, Mother Nature is all on her own. And it's the same with grief. And so to ride that wave all the way to the shore, day in and day out, especially right after he died, was an act of surrender that I had never, ever faced. And so I got it tattooed on my arm to remind me of it. And I love it. Wow. I love that word.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that these big events in our life can teach us so much, because in daily life, let's say we feel disgruntled that, about a coworker or somebody annoys us on Instagram or Twitter or something. Often we don't really face that emotion. We're not taught this in the West. Often we distract or we'll project out. We'll write a text to a friend. Oh my gosh, look at how annoying she is, or whatever we say, right? Or we watch YouTube or Netflix, or we eat a cookie or a bunch of popcorn. We don't really work with the energy of our emotions in the West. And so what these, what I talk about in the book and what these practices are about is surrender and non-attachment, meaning we don't get so attached to controlling or pushing down or, this is good, this is bad, all these labels so much, but we just see everything as energy moving through us. Mm-hmm. And so that's a really big practice it's in the whole chapter that you and I talked about a bit. It's in some of the other chapters. I believe it's in the warrior chapter as well. But really when you're starting to work with your own energy, it means that things are going to start to come up, old triggers, old wounds, things that happen that maybe you never processed. But the good news is some psychologists, including Dr. David Hawkins, says, the more you feel the emotions deeply, you start to get down to the bottom of the well. So there is this bottom to our stored up energies, which can continue to create havoc, hormonal imbalance, inflammation, all sorts of things in the body. And you can actually start to digest and metabolize your emotions. It's sort of like when I would put people on a cleanse, like on a food cleanse. We need to do that emotionally and mentally. And then, we have more presence in daily life because we're not coming with this bag of unprocessed stuff. So people don't say stuff that's triggering us all the time because we work through a lot of that. And so anyways, like you were saying, the grief of losing your father, when I lost my mother, you cannot distract from that. It's this tidal wave of emotions. So what that experience gave me was the understanding of sitting in discomfort and realizing like we are strong enough to deal with it. It can go through. We can learn. We can share with each other. We can inspire each other. We can support each other. We are here for that. These emotions do not have to take us down. But again, we need tools and practices.
100%. And there's so many great ones in this book, everyone. You are more than you think you are. Practical enlightenment for everyday life. Kimberly, thank you so much for being here. Is there anywhere you want to send people, whether it's, book bonuses or social media? Where do you want people to go?
Oh, sure. So everything is on my website, which is mysoluna.com, SOLLUNA.com. And we have amazing book bonuses, including getting access to our Beyond Fear course that I actually teach with hubby for the first time, Andrea. It's an amazing
fun.
Videos, practices. You can also start reading a couple of the first few chapters right away and get invited to my free meditation event, my live event. So everything's over there, mysoluna.com.
Awesome. Thank you. And those links will definitely be in the show notes. Thanks again for being here. And listeners, thank you for giving us your time. I know how valuable that is. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now, everybody. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening to the show. And just a quick reminder that if your company needs a speaker or a trainer, I might be the right person for you. I speak and do keynotes on confidence and resilience for mixed audiences, as well as do trainings on the Daring Way, which is the methodology based on the research of Dr. Brené Brown. So if you think it might be a good fit, hit me up at support@AndreaOwen.com or head over to my speaking page, AndreaOwen.com/speaking.
I'd like to introduce you to the Minimalist Moms podcast. It's hard enough being a mom, and the last thing you need is stress from too much stuff and an overcrowded schedule. For too long, I lived with the mindset that bigger was better, and the more I added to my life, instead of feeling better, I felt overwhelmed. It was time for a radical new mindset. Less is more. I'm not into extremes. I didn't throw everything away. My brand of minimalism is more about adding than subtracting. Get rid of the excess to make room for what you love. In other words, it's about living life with purpose. I hope you'll listen in, and my guest and myself can inspire you to think more and do with less. The Minimalist Moms podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.